Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-foamed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, and glad you're joining me again today. This is episode 95, June 29th, 2018, and today we're going to talk about 5 great ways to use coffee grounds on the homestead. Looks like we're in store for another heat wave around here on my homestead. We're going to have several days of mid-90 degree weather, it looks like. So there's going to be some garden watering going on. There's going to be some fans and some ice bottles put on the animals, you know, the small livestock in cages. There's just going to be a lot. It's always makes things a little more stressful. The good thing is, though, I'm on my vacation this next week, so it's a staycation. I'll be around the house a lot, so I'll be here to put a little extra effort into the garden and into the livestock and caring for things around here, and hoping to get a lot done for the podcast and for the website, and just make some upgrades and do some things along with doing a lot of work around the homestead that I just haven't had the time to get to lately. So I always enjoy my staycations. A lot of people think that they'd rather just go somewhere on a vacation. Personally, I'd rather stay at home and work. I love it. It's what I love most. I really do. I mean, I would rather be here than going somewhere on a vacation. Hopefully I can squeeze a couple days of fishing in, wanting to get out with my grandson and take him fishing and just spend a little time with him and just do a lot of stuff. So a lot going on around here. Hope things are going well in your homestead and that you got a lot going on. But let's just jump right into our topic today. Actually, this is based on a question that came in. Adam had a little bit more to ask than just about where to use his coffee grounds. Adam actually asks, I have a compost pile going with mostly used straw bales and various clippings, but have been tossing coffee grounds and eggshells into the pile, then tossing it randomly. I don't have my process down yet, but I was wondering how much coffee grounds could potentially be too much. I'm planning on working the compost in next year's garden, which will be tomatoes, various beans, corn, pumpkins, and I guess your standard garden staple crops. I'm also looking for uses for days-old coffee, since there's always a little left in the pot each day. We love our coffee, so there are fresh grounds daily. Great question, Adam. Let's just jump right into it here. Coffee grounds in compost. How much can you add? I mean, let's just flat out, the answer you're looking for is no more than 25% of the volume of your compost bin. That's a lot, though. I mean, generally a compost bin should minimum be a 4x4 cube to get the best heat out of your compost pile. You want to get the best balance out of your compost pile. So you want a pretty big compost pile, and that'd be a lot of coffee. So probably not going to overdo it in coffee, would be my guess. Let's talk a little bit about balancing out a compost bin before we move on and talk about other uses for coffee, though. Compost is absolutely one of the best places you can put your used coffee grounds. But how do you balance that? Here's the whole thing with balancing a compost pile. And this is kind of a rabbit trail. We'll get off the coffee thing for a minute, and this will kind of take this episode in a different direction. But I think it's important to know, to get the ideal heat out of a compost pile, to get it where you want it, a balanced compost pile. What you're looking for is about around 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. Now, that can be a little deceiving, because when we look at the actual carbon or nitrogen to carbon ratio of coffee, it's 25-1. So, I mean, there's a lot of confusion in there on how you would balance that out. But when you look at something like leaves or hay, it's probably more like carbon to nitrogen, like 100-1. All that can get really confusing if you try to actually break down the actual carbon to the actual nitrogen in each specific thing you're putting in. What it's going to look like when you're putting it in there is your browns and greens. Greens being the things that are higher in nitrogen, that are fresher, greener, of course, or just your food scraps, your coffee grounds, the things that are nitrogen based. Those things are your greens. Your browns are your things like your straw, your leaves, your sticks, the cardboard paper, things like that you're putting in there. Those things are going to be your carbon. What you're really looking for, I mean, if you just to eyeball it to get your balance, is you're looking about 2 to 1, 2 carbon to 1 nitrogen. That's going to give you a good 30 to 1 balance in your carbon to nitrogen ratio. This is going to produce the best, what we call sweetest smelling and fastest acting compost pile. If you get too much carbon, what's going to happen is it's going to slow down the process. It's not going to, the microorganisms that digest the compost, they're going to eat a lot slower. It's not going to really boost things up and get it going. If you get it too nitrogen rich though, you're going to have a really strong smelling compost pile, which you don't want. So you're trying to maintain, it's really anywhere from 30 to 50, 30 to 35 is probably ideal though, on your nitrogen to 1 carbon, but it looks like more carbon than nitrogen because your nitrogen is obviously richer. So what you're looking for is 2 carbon to 1 nitrogen in the actual appearance of the pile. In other words, whatever you're putting in that's a green, you're going to double that in brown and add that much brown to it. So that's what you're kind of looking for to get that ideal pile. Of course, you're tossing it, you're aerating it. That really helps get the microorganisms working in your compost pile and start digesting that compost pile. And when you do that, you're going to get a really fast, really hot, decent smelling compost pile. It won't be stinky. So that's what you're looking for. And that's going to give you your fastest compost. And coffee has a nitrogen to carbon ratio of 25 to 1. So it's ideal. It's almost perfect for a compost pile. It really is. So just make sure how much coffee you put in there, double that amount of carbon that's in there. And so basically you don't want more than, because it's so high in nitrogen, you don't want probably more than 25% of your compost pile being coffee. But like I said, that's a lot of coffee, because you're going to want a mixture of other nitrogen products. You're going to want some manure. You're going to want some green grass cuttings in there. You're going to put some other things in there, some food scraps and things in there. So probably, you don't want more than probably 25% of it in coffee. But again, that's a lot of coffee. Where else can you use your coffee grounds, though? If you have a vermicomposting bin, it's ideal for that, a little bit of that. Because it's kind of acidic, you don't want to add too much of that to a vermicomposting bin, but worms absolutely love a little bit of it. They actually really love the unused coffee, which we'll talk about in a minute. You can dilute that a little bit with some water. And if you do put the coffee grounds in a vermicomposting pile, they're actually better to put in still wet, not dry them out like you would maybe in a compost pile or around in a garden. Using actually wet coffee grounds a little bit on the top of the soil, they'll eat it. But again, it's a little bit acidic, so you have to be careful on how much you put in there. Some other uses for coffee grounds on the homestead, believe it or not, it makes a great mulch around certain plants, certain nitrogen loving plants, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But it does help retain moisture in soil, and it is antimicrobial, so it'll actually cut down on fungal diseases, which is really good. So using it around things like tomatoes for its mulch purposes. But that brings us to the next use, and that's as a fertilizer. Number 4, a fertilizer. Coffee actually has an NPK ratio, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Every fertilizer has a NPK ratio. Coffee's NPK ratio is actually 2.1, 0.3, and 0.3, which means it's really high in nitrogen and it has a little phosphorus and a little potassium. But it's mostly nitrogen based. Well, what plants love nitrogen? Well, anything that, like a tomato, loves nitrogen. Anything that's a heavy nitrogen feeder is going to absolutely love coffee grounds put around it. So putting it around your tomatoes is a great idea directly. You can actually just put it right around your tomatoes. They're going to love that. Anything that requires a high nitrogen is going to love coffee grounds around it. Also, it makes a great pest control, specifically for slugs and snails. They hate the stuff. They won't crawl over it. They hate it. So putting it around some plants For that, you sprinkle it around, and it'll just, that way you're not overdoing it, but putting a little bit of it around some plants can really cut down on the slugs and snails. I need to do that. I've been having some slug and snail pressure on my my zucchini and squash, so I probably need to get out there and put a little of my coffee around that. I'm sitting here talking about this, and it's making me think about it. So there's 5 great uses for coffee right there directly in the garden or in the compost pile that you can use. Now, you also asked about using your unused coffee, and I mentioned a little bit of that in vermicomposting, but coffee has a pH that varies anywhere from 5.2 to 6.9. So, of course, it's a little acidic. So if you can actually pour cool coffee around certain plants that love a acidic soil, things like aloe, roses, and blueberries, you could actually water your plants a little bit with certain acidic loving plants with coffee, and it'll actually help change the pH of that soil to an ideal place where they like it. Blueberries, everybody struggles with blueberries. But, if you can add a little coffee around them occasionally, it really helps to lower the pH of that soil and give it a more acidic soil, and will actually help your blueberries grow. So, and I actually struggle with aloe a little bit. My aloe doesn't seem to grow real well, so I'll put a little coffee on that sometimes to try to lower the pH on that. I don't add it to my roses. I probably should, though. My roses seem to do just fine without it, but again, they love a little more of acidic soil, so it will help roses as well. So there's some definite uses, some great uses for coffee and coffee grounds right there on your homestead. So I hope that helps you. Now, all this might make you think, well, we drink a lot of coffee, but if there's that many uses for it, maybe I need to get more coffee grounds. Well, you can actually run down to a coffee shop, and a lot of times they will give you their used coffee grounds. They just throw them away anyway, and they usually bag them up as they take them out, and they have them right there in a bag. They'll usually just hand you bags of this stuff. You can go to a Starbucks or some other coffee shops, and a lot of times they'll let you have their used coffee grounds. And you can take those home and just have all kinds of coffee grounds for the garden. It's an absolutely fantastic resource for your homestead, and it's as useful as mulch or anything else that you can bring into your homestead. It's very great organic matter for your homestead. So there you have it. There's a few uses for coffee. It's a short one today, guys. Pretty easy one. But yeah, definitely use that coffee. And we drink a lot of coffee around here too, so I understand your situation there. You want to find a use for that stuff. It's a great product for the homestead. Today, for the recommendations, I'm going to recommend a composting book. It's the Rodell Book of Composting. It's a great resource for composting. If you want to know more about composting, that book has a lot of answers, and I'll put a link to that book in the show notes for you. You can check that out. Today on the Homestead Life segment, where I share something that's just better in my life because of homesteading, I want to talk about the zucchini harvest. Every year we all joke about how many zucchinis we get, right? But I love the zucchini harvest. It's one of the earlier things you get in your garden, and it's just so prolific. You just get so much of it, and it's one of them things that's it's an awesome thing to hand to other people, and just all the thing. The first thing I do, and it's probably not even the healthiest thing, but I take a good, a decent, not a big zucchini, but one of the smaller zucchinis, and I slice it up. And the first things I do is I fry some zucchini, because I just love fried zucchini. So it's not the healthiest way to eat a zucchini, and we do a lot of other things with it, but my first one every year, I was like, okay, I want some fried zucchini because it tastes great. So I'll fry one up, and then I start doing other things. My daughter, she makes an awesome dish, a zucchini and squash dish that she bakes in the oven and makes. I don't even know what else she puts in it, but man, it comes out fantastic. So usually she comes over and hooks us up with one of those dishes. Always jumping on the zucchini bread. When you get those bigger zucchinis that can't be used for anything else, man, they make a fantastic bread. So just all kinds of things you can do with the zucchini harvest. And we grow a lot of it here because I love it. I mean, I can't never get enough of it. I'll shred a bunch of it and even freeze it. That usually turns out pretty good for bread. We use a lot of that in bread. Now, a lot of people say that it doesn't make an ideal bread after you freeze it, but I haven't had any problems with it. It seems to come out all right for me the few times I've done it. So shred some up, put it in the freezer, save it for later, make that zucchini bread throughout the season. But I tell you, zucchini harvest definitely is something that's better in my life because of homesteading. I love my zucchini. If you want to submit a question for this podcast, you can send your questions to ask@smalltownhomestead.com, or you can call or text in your questions to our voicemail at 765-203-1037. 1949, and you can submit as many questions as you like. I love getting questions. Also, if you're a member of the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group, that is our Facebook group for this podcast. By the way, if you want to join that group, all you have to do to join is ask. It is closed, but you get right in there if you just ask. Go to Facebook and search Homestead Front Porch. We'd be happy to have you in there. But you can also just tag me in a post there with your questions, and I'll put them in the queue to answer in the podcast. So several ways you can submit a question, and we'll take all the questions you can send us, because I'm piling them up, guys. I mean, this is if we're doing multiple episodes per week, it really helps me work ahead and get these done. So send in all the questions you want. I love doing this format. I do have a feeling we'll be changing. We won't always be doing this. Probably have some interviews, probably just have some topics here and there, just some different variety. And I know you guys are probably even getting a little tired of just the solid questions, but it's easiest right now. But we'll be changing that up a little bit and doing some different things. So, but I love this format of the questions. It's so much easier for me to do the podcast this way. The podcast is made possible for those who join our Homestead Forum membership community. If you want to know more about the benefits of that membership, go to thehomesteadforum.com, or you can just head over to the website, smalltownhomestead.com. We have the links there for it. Always a link in the show notes as well. But there's just a lot of benefits to joining that membership, guys. Extra podcasts. You like the old format? We do a longer form topic show for the membership group. And also we have the live chats in there. We have videos, we have a discussion forum, we have discounts on homesteading products, just all kinds of stuff going on in there. It's a great membership. Go be a part of that. It really helps keep this podcast going. It's a lot of fun. I also think that as that grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just going to be a great resource for homesteading information. There's already a lot in there. We've only been doing that just a few months, and it's already, there's a lot going on in there already. So come be a part of that. Help me build that community and help support this podcast. It's a great way to do it. The show notes for this episode can be found at smalltownhomestead.com/95. Thanks for joining me today, guys. And until next time, happy homesteading and God bless.
Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.